Rui Costa, a name which once symbolised elegance, passion and loyalty to Benfica. A boyhood fan who became a legend on the pitch, even returning home to end his career at the club that he loved. But today, that same Rui Costa is a divisive figure among Benfica fans. And the question is, why? Of course, as I mention in every single video, I am a sporting fan. So I'm going to let you know when things are going to be my opinion and when things are going to be fact. I want this to be as unbiased as possible. I will try my best to do so. But yeah, I'll let you know what is fact and what is just my opinion. I think Rui Costa is and was a phenomenal player. And obviously Benfica are the most successful club in Portugal. So there's no taking away from them there. So I don't want this to act like a bitter or me trying to, hate on Benfica. This is something I see from a lot of Benfica fans. I've asked a lot of Benfica fans on their opinion. So I've got a bit of research that has been done to be put into this video as well. And I've done other videos like this in the past. At Porto, the last one against Boavista, seemed to do very well. So if you like content like this, please like, comment and subscribe. Let me know what club you want to do next. Sporting is obviously going to be on the agenda. I've done a few bit more of research onto that one. I've got a nice video tailored up to that as well. But yeah, let's get on to why Benfica fans have a turbulent relationship with Rui Costa. In order to speak about Rui Costa, I have to go a bit back in the timeline to speak about this man, Luís Filipe Vieira, one of the most powerful men in Portuguese football history and the president of Benfica for a number of years. To understand why Benfica fans view Rui Costa with some suspicion, we need to go back to Luís Filipe Vieira. Rui Costa wasn't just a club legend who returned to take charge of a club in crisis. He was actually Luís Filipe Vieira's right-hand man. He worked with him as a sporting director and later as vice president. So when Luís Filipe Vieira was forced out in 2021 amid corruption allegations, Rui Costa was next in line. But was he really a fresh start or a continuation of the old problems? Luís Filipe Vieira's downfall was dramatic and potentially something that could be turned into a documentary on Netflix one day. Accused of fraud, tax evasion and money laundering, he left Benfica in disgrace. Fans have been calling for his resignation for years, frustrated by questionable deals, financial mismanagement and a club that seemed to serve business interests more than footballing success. But it might be odd now that people look at Luís Filipe Vieira as someone who had a lack of success at Benfica, because when you look at the statistics, he joined in 2003 and was let go in 2020-21, and in that time, Benfica won 19 major trophies under his presidency, including a three-peat of a league title from the 2014-15 season to the 2016-17 season. But much like Pinto da Costa, who sadly passed away this week, it was something that Benfica fans are always grateful for what Luís Filipe Vieira did for them on a success level, but towards the end of his tenure is when things look to go from bad to worse for Benfica on that front. After firing Rui Vitória, the man who won them 3 back-to-back championships, Luís Filipe Vieira turned to Bruno Lage, who won them a title in the 2018-19 season, but when things were going well, he got sacked also, and was replaced by arguably Luís Filipe Vieira's favourite manager and good friend, Jorge Jesus. Why was this controversial? Some of you may know that Jorge Jesus actually won a lot of titles with Benfica before leaving in the 2014-15 season. It was at the end of that season he joined arch rivals Sporting, stabbing Luís Filipe Vieira in the back and joining an arch rival. And after 3 years at Sporting, where he won precisely 0 league titles, he left Sporting to go to Saudi Arabia to join Al Hilal. And after another brief stint at Flamengo, Jorge Jesus returned to Benfica under Luís Filipe Vieira's ownership. And you could argue, on a footballing standpoint, this is where the nail in the coffin was made for Luís Filipe Vieira. Benfica and Jorge Jesus spent a whopping 115 million euros. And where did they finish? In 3rd place, behind Sergio Conceição's Porto and a fresh-faced Ruben Amorim winning the title at Sporting. Former Benfica captain, no less. It was after that season, in July 2021, Luís Filipe Vieira was effectively ousted from the club. Charges of fraud, money laundering, forgery and tax evasion. His arrest was part of Operation Cartão Vermelho, which translates to Operation Red Card, an investigation into financial irregularities involving Benfica and his personal business of dealings. Vieira was accused of using Benfica for personal financial gain, including questionable business deals that allegedly benefited him and his associates rather than the club. Authorities also investigated his role in illegal financial transactions, including unpaid debts and deals that may have involved some money laundering. After being detained, he stepped down as Benfica's president, officially resigning on July 15th, 2021, to avoid further damage to his club's reputation. His departure marked an end of nearly a 20-year presidency, during which he transformed Benfica financially, but left under a cloud of controversy. Even before his arrest, there was increasing dissatisfaction among Benfica's fans due to the club's financial struggles, questionable transfers, and failure to remain competitive in the league and in Europe. So with Luís Filipe Vieira gone, a new election was started, and Rui Costa was running against a businessman called Francisco Benitez. Francisco Benitez led a movement of Se Ver o Benfica, which basically meant standing against Luís Filipe Vieira's regime, including Rui Costa. One of Benitez's promise was to have the most transparency at the club that Benfica has ever seen. But unfortunately for Benitez, Rui Costa wiped the floor with him. 84% of the vote going to Rui Costa, with Francisco Benitez getting 12%, with the others being blank or null votes. Many saw this as Rui Costa's election marking a continuation of Vieira's leadership, but just under a different person. Rui Costa also promised reform and a greater transparency in the club, something that we have still not seen. Here's where Rui Costa's problem begins. He was there through all of it. He wasn't just a bystander. He was a part of the administration that approved transfer deals, financial decisions, and club policies. You think he just didn't understand or didn't know what was going on? It could happen, but it seems extremely unlikely. He may not have been the mastermind behind the operations, but he was in the room. And when Vieira left, Rui Costa smoothly transitioned into power. For many fans, this didn't feel like a change. It was just more of the same. So point number one is that Rui Costa was a part of Luís Filipe Vieira's presidential team. He knew, or maybe didn't know, what was going on, depending on who you ask and who you believe. Rui Costa said he had no involvement in anything, and there was an investigation apparently, and he was found innocent. So who am I to argue with courts and internal processes? But many Benfica fans find it hard to believe that Rui Costa just wasn't either involved or in the know of the situation. The second biggest concern for Benfica fans, and why their relationship with the former midfielder is so turbulent at this time, is due to shady deals and dubious transfers. One of the biggest concerns is Benfica's transfer dealings under Vieira and later Rui Costa. The club had a habit of making deals that raised eyebrows, players being signed for inflated fees only to contribute little to the team. For example, when you look at Benfica's top 10 transfers, there are some great sales and great players in there like Enzo Fernandez, Darwin Núñez, who managed to recoup the fee and more. But you've also got players like Arthur Cabral, Everton, Julian Weigl, Raul de Tomas, and even in the top 15 you've got Pedrinho and Roman Yaremchuk, guys who were signed for inflated fees and didn't end up doing much at Benfica at the time, and then were flogged off at the first opportunity. Some Benfica fans believe certain agents have far too much influence on Benfica, and deals often benefited third parties instead of Benfica itself. Even after Vieira's departure, some of these same patterns continued under Rui Costa. For example, the sales of Enzo Fernandez below his release clause and Gonzalo Ramos below his release clause too made Benfica millions, but the reinvestment in the squad hasn't matched that expectation. The only people that benefited from the sales were of course the players who left, but also their agents. In fact, the season after Gonzalo Ramos's and Enzo Fernandez sales, Benfica did manage to win the league in 22-23, but the season following, they made awful investment deals, such as ones I mentioned before, like Arthur Cabral, David Jurasek, as well as young talented players like Gianluca Prestiani and Benjamin Rollheiser, who as of yet have not worked out for Benfica, but has also brought in terrible loan signings like Juan Bernat and Julian Draxler, who were not up to the level of Benfica's standard. I would say one of the biggest complaints I see from Benfica fans is Rui Costa's handling of transfers. Benfica and every single team in Liga Portugal will always have to be a selling club, but under Rui Costa's leadership, Benfica's strategy seems to be focused more on maximising profit than building a truly competitive squad. As mentioned, guys are sold below their release clauses like Enzo Fernandez and Gonzalo Ramos. Not to mention João Neves, who went to PSG last summer for 60 million euros, yet is by far one of the most talented midfielders in Europe, if not the world, and he was only sold for 60 million euros. To put that into perspective, someone like Manuel Ugarte was sold for 70 million euros to the same team, Paris Saint-Germain. Fans have expected smarter investments, players capable of delivering titles, but under Rui Costa's leadership, they've only won one title since taking over in 2021. As of recording on the 20th of February 2025, it's still a very long season. Point number 3 is going to be the issue of coaching decisions. When Roger Schmidt arrived, he initially won over the fans, even delivering a Premier Liga in his first season. But cracks quickly appeared. Poor tactical decisions, stubborn selections, and a lack of squad depth turned Schmidt into a hero into a villain. And yet, for the longest time, Rui Costa stood by him, even when it was clear the team was regressing. For example, personally, as in my opinion, I think Roger Schmidt should have been sacked after losing 5-0 to Porto. But losing 5-0 to your rivals, and trust me, I've experienced this, is one of the worst feelings you can have as a fan. And there was quickly no turning back for a lot of Benfica fans for Roger Schmidt after that happened. But when Rui Costa finally pulls the trigger and sacks Roger Schmidt, he has a big challenge on his hand, and arguably one of the biggest cause of his presidency. Does he go out and get a new manager who has excelled in other leagues, or a top-range manager who would make a statement? No. He brings in Bruno Lage, someone who was sacked by the former regime under Luís Filipe Vieira. Many Benfica fans saw this as a backward step. Of course, Bruno Lage was sacked from not being good enough, basically. It felt like Bruno Lage was the easy option for Rui Costa, someone who knew the club and someone who's been there before, instead of going out there and making a marquee signing for a manager, showing ambition and a real vision of what Benfica wanted to be. And instead, it was Bruno Lage, someone who had been sacked less than 4 years ago, to return to the helm. With Bruno Lage as well, people will say that he is not a true manager. And what I mean by that is, I've said this before, he's a showman. He knows when the cameras are around him, when it's time to make a statement. For example, that loss to Barcelona was just such acting in my, again, this is my opinion, this is not fact. I think when he does this, sort of team talk on the pitch, it's just to throw his players under the bus almost, and he's shouting at them. But to be fair, in that game, I do think Benfica did have a right to be annoyed at the referee decisions. I think some of them were absolutely insane, but Bruno Lage just felt like, to me, he's doing it in front of all the fans, that it was his time to try and show the fans that he's trying to do something, when it just didn't seem real. Basically, it didn't seem authentic, like someone like a Sergio Conceição, for example. Sergio Conceição does that on the pitch, and I believe every word he's saying. But when it's Bruno Lage and the Benfica team, I just don't see it. I don't see him as a leader, someone who the Benfica players respect, to even allow him to do that, and that makes sense. And he's not really done anything to prove that respect. Sergio Conceição won a lot of titles under Porto. Even Ruben Amorim gained that respect from the Sporting players due to him winning titles. Bruno Lage has won 1 title in his career, and he acts around, especially in the video that hopefully I'll put on screen. I just don't see it. I think he's acting. And I think a lot of Benfica fans feel the same way too. And of course, with managerial decisions, I guess also just has results in general embedded in that. Like I mentioned, they haven't won a league title since the 22-23 season, and have only won 1 championship under Rui Costa's leadership, finishing 3rd in his first season, 1st in his second, and 2nd in his 3rd. Rui Costa's legacy at Benfica is complicated. As a player, he was a symbol of passion and elegance. As president, he is seen by many as a man struggling to balance the demands of modern football with the expectations of a historic club. His critics argue that he needs ruthlessness to take Benfica to the next level. His supporters say he inherited a mess and needs time. But in football, time is a luxury that few presidents can afford. And for Rui Costa, the weight of his own legend only makes the pressure that more heavier. So why do Benfica fans dislike Rui Costa as president? Some argue it's about transfers, some argue it's about results, but the majority will argue it's about trust. He was supposed to be the man who cleaned up Benfica, but to many, he's just someone who benefited from the same shady deals and system that led to Luís Filipe Vieira's downfall. He talks about change, but does he really represent it? Otherwise, for many Benfica fans, he'll remain a legend on the pitch, but a disappointment in the boardroom. With Benfica's elections coming up in the next few years, I do wonder if Rui Costa will stay as Benfica president. Because at the moment, especially if Benfica go another year without winning a title, it could mean the end of Rui Costa's legacy at Benfica. Thank you very much for watching this video. As I said, I tried to keep my bias out of it. I let you know when my things were opinions or when they were facts. I hope you did enjoy this video. I made a similar one about Porto, but even more recently, I made a similar one about Boavista. Why they signed the free agents like Lauren Kazawa, Marco Van Ginkel, Thomas Vasilic, Abdoulaye Diaby. Why are they playing Football Manager in real life? Check out this video here. But otherwise, I've been Stan Fonseca. Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you next time, and peace.